So first of all, I literally have struggled with anxiety my entire life. And anxiety for this conversation, the way I define it is the habit of worrying spiraled out of control. You know, you may say that you are a worrier. That's not true. You have a habit of worrying. A habit is a pattern of behavior or thinking that you repeat without realizing it. So anxiety happens when that pattern of worrying about things spirals out of control, and now it starts to marry and manifest itself with physical sensations too. That's all that it is. I know that I say that's all that it is. Me personally, I struggled with anxiety, I think my entire life. It became quite acute when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I became medicated in the middle of law school. I took Zoloft for 2 decades. When our first daughter was born, who is now 17, the postpartum depression and the cascading panic was so terrible that not only was I medicated and couldn't breastfeed, but I couldn't be left alone with her.
Wow.
So when I say you can cure yourself of anxiety, I don't say that lightly. 4 years ago, after I had been using the 5-second rule to change my behavior, how I spoke to my husband, how I negotiate in business meetings, how I conduct sales, the kind of parent that I am, my health habits, my eating habits, curbing the drinking, I thought, I wonder if I can use this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing to get control of my thought patterns. Not my behavior patterns, my thought patterns. Yes, you can. Wow. So we're gonna build this conversation because I want to start with something we can all relate to, and that is, how do you stop worrying and how do you stop listening to self-doubt? This is how you're going to do it. So all day long, you're going to have moments where your thoughts drift. And I use that word on purpose because for me, there is a physical sensation when you start to use the 5-second rule and you start to wake up, not only on time in the morning, but you wake up to your life and the opportunities in your life. Your thoughts drift. Like you'll just be hanging out with your friends and then suddenly you're like, I'm not sure that person likes me anymore. I haven't heard from my kids lately. I wonder if they're dead or, as a check, like you just start worrying about stuff. Why? Because it's a habit. Because when you're not paying attention, your brain shifts from you being a decision maker and paying attention to you just kind of spinning things on autopilot. And one of your habits is worrying. The second you wake up and you notice, holy cow, I'm talking some negative garbage to myself right now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You've just shifted the part of the brain that you're using. You've shifted from the basal ganglia, which is where your habit loops are spinning, and you've awakened your prefrontal cortex. You've also interrupted that pattern. Now what you're going to do, because your mind is actually ready to receive a different thought because of the counting, now you can put in an anchor thought. Like if you have a mantra, if you've got a vision about the way that your business is going to turn out in 5 years, if you just have a thought that makes you really happy and proud, insert that. Now, why does this work? It works because of the counting. And I'm not kidding. We know, based on research, that positive thinking alone, not effective. In some instances, trying to force yourself to think positive can actually make the worries worse. Why? Well, the reason why is because it's really hard to just change the channel. What we have to do first is basically interrupt it and turn off the TV and then turn it back on with the prefrontal cortex awakened. So the counting is essential. And so you can start using this today. You catch yourself talking garbage to yourself, because we all know if I were to put a speaker on your head and broadcast, you would be sitting here in the audience, you'd be in an insane asylum, because the crap that you say to yourself is insane. And the problem is we listen to it. You'll be in a sales meeting and you'll be undermining yourself. They're not going to buy. Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. You're not even present. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Switch it back. Get back to that vision that you have about toasting your success, or this customer being really happy, or you being proud of yourself. Whatever that vision may be, you can control your thoughts. And this is not just us talking about it. This is a tool that you can use. So let's take it a step further. So worrying, if you let it go unchecked, what will happen is you will get used to worrying. You will get used to living in a state where you're slightly agitated all the time. Let me talk a little bit about agitation. So what we know based on research is that physically in your body, So physiologically, being excited is the exact same thing as being afraid. Let me say that again because it is so important. In your body, being excited is the exact same thing as being afraid. Your body doesn't know the damn difference. Your heart races, your armpits sweat, you're like, you may get tight in your throat. Your cheeks may get pink like mine do when I get excited. The only difference between excitement and fear is what your brain says. And the problem is, if you have a habit of worrying, guess what you're going to tell yourself is going on? That you're like freaking out, that you're not excited, that something must be wrong. Oh gosh, why would you say something's wrong? Because you got a habit of saying that all the time. Even as I became a speaker for a living, or I'd be on CNN, when I first started doing it, I would be freaking out backstage. But even though, like, just last week, he's standing backstage, about to go on, 8,000 people, heart races, armpit sweat, my hands get clammy. I'm not nervous though, not at all. I'm excited. And so I developed this technique, and research out of Harvard, not based on my technique, but something very similar, proves that if you basically, right before you're about to do something, take a test, run a race, public speaking, a business negotiation, ask somebody to marry you, whatever it may be that gets your heart racing, just do this. Go, I'm excited. I'm excited to give that speech. I'm excited to ask him or her. I'm excited to do this race. I'm excited. Because what happens is you give your brain context, so your brain doesn't escalate the stuff going on in your body. Your brain's not worried. Make sense?
Yeah.
So you can combine this with the 5-second rule. So we know how to do worrying. You catch your thoughts drift, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, anchor thought. If you start to feel your heart racing, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to awaken the prefrontal cortex, and then start going, I'm really excited to do this. I'm really excited to do this. Another technique that you can use is ask, I think they call it interrogatory questions, where instead of giving yourself a pep talk, say, well, why am I ready to do this? Why am I ready? Because that'll force you to answer the question, which then convinces you. So why am I ready to close this sale? Why am I ready to give this speech? Why am I ready? So those are two strategies that you can use backed by science that are proven to actually make your performance be much better. Now let's take it a step further to anxiety. So anxiety is what happens when the habit of worrying spins out of control, your body gets really agitated, and then you allow your mind to escalate it into a full-blown panic attack. So for those of you that have not had the pleasure of having a panic attack, let me explain what it's like. So have you ever been in your car and you're driving down the road and you go to change lanes and all of a sudden there's like, oh my God, there's a car right there, right? And you swerve a little bit and then your heart's like, and you may sweat a little bit and you grip the wheel really tight and you're super locked in on the road ahead of you. But then that car pulls away and the near miss scenario passes and your mind starts going, okay, you're all right now.
Right.
You're all right now. That's it. That's all. That's what a panic attack is, only it happens while you're standing in front of your coffee pot. Seriously. You have that same, oh my God, what behind that? And your heart's racing, and the problem for your brain is that your brain can't look around and say, holy cow, we almost got hit by a car.
Right.
Your brain's saying, what the hell is wrong with her? She's making coffee and she's freaking out. And so now your brain has a problem. Because what's your brain's job? It's designed to protect you. So your brain will now do whatever it can to magnify the problem. Remember we talked about the spotlight effect? It'll start telling you all kinds of crazy stuff because it can't figure out contextually what the hell's going on. She's just making coffee, now her heart is racing and she's breathing really. Holy cow, maybe she is having a heart attack. A lot of people that have panic attacks say, I think I'm dying, oh my God, what's happening? Wow. Or you'll see them do the deer in the headlights thing where they got to get out of the room. That is the spotlight effect in your brain, now taking control and magnifying everything to get you out of whatever it was. So here's how you use the 5-second rule. You use it to stabilize your thoughts before the panic escalates. And then what happens is it drifts into worry and then it disappears. Right. So the second you feel worry, you catch it, you train yourself to do that. If you start feeling yourself getting, your heart racing, you can 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and use the I'm excited, I'm excited. If that doesn't work, literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just give yourself an anchor thought, literally, of you being okay. You have this incredible family motto that I would love for every family to adopt this, but can you share it with us?
So in our family, we have a mantra, which is to never worry alone. And that's true of us as parents and also of our kids. And what I hope to instill in my kids with that mantra is the idea that we are worthy of support. We are worthy of being held and nurtured and supported when we are having setbacks. We are not our setbacks. Our worth is our worth. And when we worry with others, we feel validated. We hear our worth. We see it in the support that others give us. We get that social proof that we are valued no matter what.
Mm.
Whatever you do, don't worry alone. That's when we get into trouble. So reach out for support. We think as parents, our job is to raise self-reliant, independent adults. And that is an important thing to do. But there is a more profound lesson that our kids need to learn if we want to raise them to be healthy. And that is the skills of interdependence, how to rely on others and how to have others rely on them in healthy ways. And so that's where the don't worry alone comes from, is part of the skills that I'm trying to teach my kids of interdependence.
Oh, wow. That's so important. You're right. And we do focus on kind of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and being being self-reliant and taking responsibility, that modeling healthy connection and interdependence, getting support when you need support, talking about your feelings, that we got to model that too. And if you're not, you're teaching somebody to suffer in silence the way that so many of us have for generations. One other thing that I love that you wrote about was this idea that being good enough is way better than being perfect. Why is that?
Yes. So I talk about this in the book that when my oldest was born almost 18 years ago, I thought about going back to graduate school to get a PhD in psychology so that I could be the perfect parent with the latest research. And I know,
God.
crazy, right? And
Yes.
what I found is that perfection as a parent does not serve me and it does not serve my kids. What serves us both better is this idea of being good enough. And the good enough mother is responsive to her kids' needs. She doesn't meet every need because she can't. Only, no one can. But to be responsive, to acknowledge it, to validate the need, and to do the best that you can do. And that takes us off the hook as parents, not needing to be perfect. And it helps our kids, regulate their emotions when they get a little bit disappointed and frustrated that they can't have the perfect parent in this situation.
It reminds me of this thing that you wrote, that the difference between getting a 91% on a test and a 99 is having a good life.
That is it. That is it. And, as parents, I certainly fell into this trap myself. The idea that we had to put our needs behind our kids at every turn. And I certainly subscribe to that idea of needing to be the perfect mother. And then I realized that I was getting burnt out. And I would say the thing that really changed my mind about all of this is the research. The number one intervention for any child in distress is to make sure the primary caregiver, most often the mother or the father, that their well-being, their mental health is intact, because a child's resilience rests fundamentally on their caregiver's resilience. And caregiver's resilience rests fundamentally on the depth and support of their relationships.
I want to make sure everybody heard that. You're saying that based on the research, if there is a child that is struggling, the most important intervention that works to help the struggling child is to give the caregiver of that child deeper levels of support.
Yes.
If you're somebody that's listening to us right now and you're like, Jenny, Mel, that sounds great, but I don't have anybody, or I don't even know where to start, or who the hell am I going to ask, because everyone that I know is also burnt out. You have a framework for this. So can you lay it out for everybody listening?
Sure. So this is a study that was originally started by Sonia Luthar, one of the leading researchers in the world on resilience. And she did a series of studies, including people who were busy mothers and also had a busy professional life. And she wanted to find out if 1 hour a week for 3 months, 1 hour a week with a small group of 4 to 5 people in the same sort of kind of world, if they could be sources of support for each other. And what she found was no mother bowed out, even when the busyness, of their professional and home lives were calling for them. 1 hour of the week, they met, they talked about their struggles. And at the end of it, she measured their cortisol levels. Those had lowered. She measured well being, relationships with their kids, and relationships with their parents. And what she found was that you only need 1 hour of deliberate support a week. 1 hour.
And for those of you going, but I don't know where to get it, churches have free daycare. And they have a lot of support groups. That would be a great place to start. Community centers, looking in your town's Facebook pages for events that are going on. You're not going to find it sitting on your couch complaining to yourself about it. You're going to have to put yourself out there. You also say it's critical that we tell our kids and our colleagues and our friends our failure stories. What does that mean?
So my daughter was in seventh grade and she considered herself a good writer. And her seventh grade teacher, gave her her paper back and it had red marks all over the place. So she was so discouraged. And I said, Caroline, come to my computer. And I pulled up an early article I had written for the Washington Post science section. And it was edited by a really seasoned, wonderful editor. And it was a bloodbath. I mean, there were comments. There was, I don't understand this. Can you add more here? I need another interview. Where is this study? And my daughter was like, oh my God, I can't believe they let you write for them. And I've been writing for them for 10 years now. And I said, see, at first I was embarrassed. I told her to need all that work, to see all those red marks. And then I thought about it a different way. I said, oh, this person is trying to invest in me. They are trying to make me a better writer. So I welcome feedback, is what I said to my daughter. I sometimes even say out loud to myself in my office, well, that's enough for the day. Like just that, because I have a tendency to overwork. And so I have to put the brakes on myself. And I want to model that out loud to my kids.
You have a nicer way of saying, I'm always like, well, I just fucked up again. And then they're like, Mom, $1 in the swear jar. I'm like, I'm going to be paying for your college tuition with the amount I'm swearing around here because I screw up all the freaking time. Worrying is wasting time. It's robbing you of what you want to do in your life. And it's making you suffer in a needless way. Look, I don't want you to get to the end of your life and look back and think, I wish I hadn't wasted so much of my precious life on stuff that didn't matter. I wish I didn't let all that stupid worrying keep me from doing the things that I always dreamt about doing. I'm here to tell you that you can learn how to switch your thoughts to something more productive and optimistic. This is great news. Worry is a hackable thing. And I'm going to use a ton of science and proven experience to show you just how to hack it using one magical tool. And here's the great news. Once you learn how worry starts, you can use that knowledge to make it stop. You can practice this magical tool every day to quiet your mind. I mean, just imagine that. A quiet mind. Wow. I know exactly how you feel. I mean, I know how exhausting and frustrating it is to constantly be trapped in the grinding cycle of worrying about everything. How do I know this? I lived it. I've always been worried. I mean, if you could be a baby that worries, that was me. I'm sure at 11 months, when my mom was running late to heat up my pureed carrots and potatoes, I was probably thinking, is she coming back? Where is she? I'm starving. I mean, I might just starve to death here. I think she hates me. She's left. Maybe she's angry about the face I made as I tried the pureed snow peas for lunch. Oh my gosh, what do I do? I have to find a new family to feed me. How am I going to find my new family? I got no connections, no money. I'm wearing a diaper. I can't even walk yet. I'm going to starve to death in the next 24 hours. That was baby Mel. And that was just the beginning. I mean, I was just kind of warming up for a life of worry on a very elite professional level. As a little kid, I worried about everything from the teacher's reaction to whether or not the kid in the stall next to me was going to hear me fart. When I got to middle school, it was all about whether or not my tough skin jeans were cool or my acne or my new perm that I immediately regretted. When I was in college, I was worried if I studied enough for the test, if I was going to flunk out, if I was going to go blind from the grain alcohol I drank from the garbage can at that frat party. I worried if I had enough gas in the car to get to the grocery store. The truth about worrying is, once you let it start to spin, it just spins out of control. I'm sure you know this. I mean, worry has tormented me since I was a kid. It tormented me as a teen, in my 20s, my 30s, hell, my 40s. And if I can go from having this worry as my torturous default and learn how to interrupt it and redirect it and program a positive mind, you can too. Here's exactly what you need to do about worry and overthinking. Here's the magical tool I want to share with you. And I got to give you a warning. This is going to sound so simple. You might even start worrying that it's not going to work. That's why I have strung along this episode like it's an infomercial about worrying, because the solution is so simple, and it has to be. When it comes to your habit of worrying, you already overcomplicate everything. If I give you 3 steps to remember, you won't do any of them. That's how good you are at worrying. I need you to have something simple. So I've come up with this incredible way to do hand-to-hand combat with your worrying mind. Are you ready? Good. The second you catch yourself worrying, when you feel your mind spin, when you feel your shoulders pinch up towards your ears like new earrings and you feel your jaw clench, and wait, there's more. You feel yourself starting to get heavy and paralyzed and defeated, and those worries start to spin in your mind. Here's exactly what you're going to do. It's just 6 magical words. It encapsulates incredible research. It's so simple. You can do it. And don't worry, it's going to work. Here are the 6 magical words you're going to say to yourself every time you worry. What if it all works out? That's it. What if it all works out? Look, I know what you're thinking. You feel let down right now. That's because you're worried it's not going to work. But what if it all works out? What if these simple, stupid 6 words actually work? What if trying this works out? You just heard me say the words. What if it all works out? And you know what your response was? Well, I don't think it's going to work out. That's why I'm worrying. You got to trust me on this. Your worries sound just as dumb as this magical tool does. You have just listened to your worry for so long that you believe it. Now, I said this was hand-to-hand combat. You don't just throw one punch. You're going to have to keep on punching. Every time one of your stupid worries pop into your head, what if I don't get the apartment? What if I don't lose the weight? What if I don't get the raise? What if I look stupid my first day of work? What if nobody ever loves me? What if the swamp monster kills me? You need to punch those stupid worries in the face with 6 magical words, because this simple question breaks the pattern of worrying. Because if you think about worrying always begins with what if. In fact, my daughter used to call her worries the what if loop. I feel like I'm trapped in a what if loop, Mom. Well, guess what? You're trapped in a what if loop too. So you need just one fast, perfectly placed, boom, counterpunch. You need the same punch for every worry. So you get really good at punching every worry in the face. And that punch is, what if it all works out? That's the counterpunch you need to knock absolutely any worry and all overthinking away. It's pretty incredible. I'm here to tell you, in those moments when you get trapped in this, what if this, what if that, and you start spinning, you got to stop it. And the fastest way to stop the spinning is to say, well, what if it all works out? What if I get the apartment? What if I pass the test? What if the doctor says something and it's okay? What if he doesn't break up with me? What if he breaks up with me and it all works out? What if I get bad news and it all works out and I'm okay? It's a way to get back the feeling of control. You see, the research shows that when you feel out of control, Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain behind your forehead, the part that's in charge of organizing information and making decisions, it basically stops working when you feel out of control. And that's why it's so hard to make decisions. And it's why it's hard to move ahead. You just get stuck in this dark mental loop because you literally are so focused on things not working out that you don't have anything positive to grab onto. What if it all works out? Gives you something positive to hold on to. It gives your brain the ladder out of a dark hole of worry. And all you have to do is step on the first rung. Because the first rung on that ladder out of that dark hole of worry is 6 simple words. What if it all works out? Ask it again and you step on the second rung. What if it all works out? Again, and you're on the third rung. Ask it repeatedly about the same problem, and it's like climbing up the ladder. And before you know it, the ladder, what if it all works out, has got you up so high, you are out of the hole of worry, and you have a completely different view of the situation. Listen, there will always be things that come out of nowhere. We can't stop the outside world. We can't stop the fact that you are probably going to worry about something every day. I mean, hello, global pandemic. People get sick. People say they don't want to be married. Jobs get taken away. The stock market drops. Shit happens. It's easy and normal to feel knocked down by life. But you can always use these 6 magical words to help you ride the ups and downs in life. What if it all works out? Doesn't mean it's going to work out today. One of the reasons why your brain loves the sentence, what if it all works out, is you haven't put a deadline at the end of it. The fact that you're saying, well, what if it all works out, automatically allows your brain to expand out of the current crisis because you know, based on your life experience, that in the end, over the years, yeah, eventually, it does all work out. And, here's a third reason why these 6 magical words create opportunity, possibility, positivity, and a better situation. And that is because it anchors you in optimism. When you're worried and you say, how will it work out? When is it going to work out? What if it doesn't work out? The how and the when, it narrows your focus. It gets you caught in the worry loop, and it makes your thoughts and your mood spiral tighter and tighter and tighter. The second you say, well, what if it all works out? You just change that one word from how's it going to work out? How's it going to what if it all works out? I mean, come on. And it opens you up. You can just feel the different energy. How's it going to work out? What if it all works out? If you consider that it will all work out, you begin to see multiple paths. How puts the blinders on? It makes things really small. What if it all works out? Opens up the world of alternatives that you have, and it widens the scope. It widens the lens you're looking through, making room for better things to happen. The next time you hear yourself say, what if, and you start bracing for the worst, instead, just insert your new magic words. What if it all works out? What if this turns out to be the best decision I've ever made? What if I look back 6 months from now and this, right now, this was the moment I found the courage to be myself? What if I'm stronger and more resilient than I think? What if something amazing is happening and I just need to believe it? That last one is everything. I do believe something amazing is happening for you. I do believe that you are stronger and more resilient than you think. It will work out for you. It's your friend Mel, and you and I are sitting here, and I was just confessing to you that I did a whole worry spiral this morning, and I'm teaching you one of my favorite tools, the 6-sentence word, what if it all works out? We need to know that it is painful to stand there and be terrified that you're going to not be able to say goodbye to somebody that you love because you're scared of flying and now you're sitting in an airplane seat. And when you say to yourself, what if it all works out? You know what it's like? It's like, okay, life just fired an arrow at you. And I want you to stop and think right now, okay? What is an arrow that life fired at you? And think about something going on in your life right now. And in order to get you thinking about this, I'm going to bring in our global audience because I knew I wanted to talk about this. So we put up something on Instagram real quick, and you guys respond like Oh my gosh, moths to a flame. It's incredible. I love you. And I asked, what would your life be like if you didn't worry about anything? And what are you worrying about right now? And so let me tell you some of the arrows that life is throwing at people. I'm scared of flying. This is Sylvia. And I always worry because I feel out of control that I'm going to die on the plane flight. And here's the second arrow. You ready? That she's firing. What if I can't say goodbye? What if this is it? That's the second arrow. It's fine to be afraid of flying, but why are you torturing yourself with all these horrible thoughts? Instead, I want you to reach up and grab that second arrow that you're aiming at yourself with your worries in midair. I want you to yank it out of the air by going, what if it all works out? What if this plane lands? What if I not only get to see all these people that I love and say goodbye, but I'm the last one standing in my family. I outlive them all. What if it all works out? Here's another one. Maggie, annual reviews are coming up. Mm-hmm. Boom, that's an arrow in the heart. That's the first arrow. It is nerve-wracking. That's true. But why does Maggie need to go, what if I get fired? What if I'm the one that gets laid off? What's going to happen to my kids? How am I going to pay for groceries? That is the second arrow. That's why you need, what if it all works out? You reach up, you grab it, you grab it, you grab it, you grab it. Here's another one. Here's a really, really important one from Gabby. I'm going through a divorce. Boom, arrow straight to the heart. Even when you know it's the best thing, it's still painful, isn't it? That's what happens in your life. But the second arrow, what if I never, ever have the life that I actually want? You got to stop that shit from hitting your head. You got to stop firing that stuff right at yourself. That's why you got to reach up with these 6 words. What if it all works out? What if it all works out? What if getting divorced is painful, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me? What if this divorce is really challenging right now, but I'm going to emerge stronger and a better version of myself, and my kids are going to be better, and that's going to open the door to me being in a healthier, more supportive relationship? What if this is the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it's the hardest thing that ever happened to me? Isn't that awesome? This is how you stop firing that second arrow at yourself. Here's another one. There are natural disasters in the news all the time in the area that I live in. That's an arrow every time you see a natural disaster. But why do you have to fire the second one at yourself? What if the mudslide takes out my house? What if the volcano erupts here? What if the floods come and they wipe out that thing? It hasn't happened yet. So why on earth are you causing yourself this pain? I'll tell you why. Because we're used to doing it. This is what we do reflexively. Life fires an arrow and then we fire the second one. And so this is why what if it all works out isn't just putting lipstick on a pig or icing a shitty situation over with some like positive gloss. This is actually using science to combat your shitty habits of torturing yourself. This is you intervening with logic, because if something bad hasn't happened, how does worrying about it help you right now? If you don't know what's actually going to happen, how does worrying about it or assuming the worst case going to make things better? It's not. In fact, you experience the pain twice because you experience the anticipation of it. And let's just say you are going to get fired. And look, I've been fired twice. I have been literally brought into somebody's office and told I'm doing a terrible job and let go. It is the worst. And then the second you leave, once you get over the humiliation of the whole thing, it's the most liberating thing that ever happens to you, because you typically only get fired from a job that you can't stand anyway, or that you know that you're not performing in, which is the case. But I knew it was coming. I just could feel it. I tortured myself for a month. I didn't need to do that because it didn't change the outcome. If anything, it made me experience it over and over and over. And I'll tell you, anticipating it, way worse than what actually happened. If I had just said to myself for those 30 days, what if it all works out, Mel? What if you do get fired and it's the best thing that ever happened? What if you're not going to get fired, but this is a wake-up call for you to step it up and actually start performing a little bit better? It allows you to stop experiencing so much pain. Actually, yesterday, I did this before I flew to Salt Lake because I was racing around the house. I couldn't find my freaking computer charger. I couldn't find my passport. I couldn't find the bag that I normally put my travel equipment in. And I was racing around. I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I only have 15 minutes before I got to go. What if I don't find it? And I was like, Mel, stop. What if it all works out? What if you suddenly find the charger? Or better yet, you're an adult. You can get to an airport and buy a charger. So instead of literally firing arrows at yourself, you could stop firing it and focus. And that's why this is super, super important. I'm going to talk about the other reason why it's critical that you not escalate situations with this unnecessary worrying, okay? Here, let me give you some other ones from our audience. Oh, Natalie. Anytime I see somebody else happy, boom, arrow to the heart. That's what's happening around you. Then she fires a second one. What if I'm never going to find my person? Does worrying about that help you find your person? No. It actually makes you feel more insecure. And this is where I want to go next, because here's the thing. There is a profound connection between catastrophizing and aiming these arrows at yourself and the pain that you feel and how it impacts your ability to problem solve, to think clearly. This all comes from research out of UCLA from Dr. Judith Willis. I wrote about this extensively for my research in the High Five Habit book. We interviewed Dr. Judith Willis for that book and dug into her research. And she is pioneering all of this research around the connection between your nervous system and the ability for you to do what's called executive function. Executive function is basically the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex part of your brain, your forehead, basically, for those of us kind of everyday people. It's your ability to problem solve. It's your ability to make strategic decisions. It's your ability to think clearly. When you start aiming that second arrow, my daughters must have fallen off a cliff. I haven't heard from her. Something terrible has happened. I'm going to get fired. I'm never going to be happy again. I'm never going to get this weight off. And the pain and the pain and the pain that comes with doing that to yourself. It sets off the alarm, the fight or flight or freeze part of your nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, it's called. And when the alarm nervous system is going off, it impairs the cognitive functioning in your brain. It impacts decision making. It impacts your ability to focus. It impacts your ability to problem solve. And so you're not only firing a second arrow at yourself, which causes so much pain, you are also firing that arrow right into the center of your forehead. And it impacts your ability to think clearly, to solve a problem. And here's why this is important. Let's just say, for those of you that are really skeptical and you're like, but Mel, what if something bad does happen? What if your daughter did fall off of a cliff and she's laying there with a broken clavicle and she needs help? I'll tell you what, if I don't hear from her in 72 hours, I need to move into problem solving mode, right? Is it going to help me solve a problem halfway around the world if I've shot an arrow into the center of my forehead and I've worked myself into such a state that I can't think clearly? No. And so even if the worst case scenario that you're terrified about happens, your ability to face it, to problem solve through it, to think clearly about your options, it is severely impaired by this constant worrying that you are doing. And that's why this is so important. What if it all works out? It doesn't guarantee that it will. It guarantees that you will stay calm, that you will stay focused, that you will stay present, and that you will stay positive until you know otherwise. And that's everything. All right, I'm going to hit the pause real quick. I got to run to the bathroom because I have a feeling that I'm going to be talking to you right up until the time I got to race out of this hotel room to go give a speech. Don't go anywhere. I got more that I want to share with you, including a lot of really cool research. Stay with me. Welcome back. It's your pal Mel, and we're talking about the 6 words that I use that magically just boom, silences the worry spiral and my anxiety. What if it all works out? Okay. And another thing I'm going to confess to you is that until I stumbled on this, what if it all works out, I didn't realize how much I was doing this to myself. I basically walked around life with a second arrow in my head because I was constantly worried about something, constantly thinking something bad was going to happen. And, you know, some of the experts that we've had on this podcast that talk about trauma or talk about the impact of growing up in a chaotic household or experiencing abuse or being the kind of person that felt like as a kid, you were always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You were super hyper vigilant. This is very, very common for people like us. That is me. Miss looking around the corners. What is the bad thing that's going to happen? Anticipating things. And what I'm here to tell you is that if you start to really lean into what I'm talking about, which is how you aim the second arrow at your forehead, and you start utilizing, well, what if it all works out, to grab the second arrow, yank it out of your forehead, and be present in the moment and not escalate things until necessary, you can still tap into your intuition. You can still look around corners, which is a superpower for you, but you don't have to add on the pain that all of the negative thoughts are creating. And there's so much research about this. First of all, stress can actually lead to physical pain. It comes from Dr. Arthur Barsky, who's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, where they've done these studies about how stress can lead to physical pain. And let me tell you something. When you start allowing yourself to worry, I'm not going to get into college. I'm not going to be finding love after my spouse has died, or I'm never going to get this weight off, or I'm not going to get control of this. When you start doing that to yourself, it does cause physical pain. And you know this. How many times have you been so stressed out or worried that you get a headache? Or you've been worried before a test and you get nauseous, don't you? Or you start shaking, or your stomach is twisting in knots. That's why we say twisting in knots, because that's what it feels like. It's physical pain. And a lot of times it begins from your nervous system getting triggered. That's the first arrow. And the second arrow is your thoughts. So they've done all of this interesting research. And what they have been able to prove in studies is that the neural pathways in your brain that indicate physical pain, the same ones light up when you have a painful thought. And it is painful to think that you're never going to be happy. It is painful to think you're not going to see your loved ones again. It is painful to think that you're never going to achieve your dreams, or that you're never going to amount to something. That's why I want you to stop it. Scientists have also done this really interesting study where they looked at math anxiety. So math anxiety is literally just feeling stressed out and worried when you're about to do math problems. And the anticipation of doing math prompts a similar brain reaction as when you experience pain. And the researcher, who is a professor of psychology at the University of Chicago and the leading expert on math anxiety, said that it is the equivalent of burning one's hand on a hot stove. And I love knowing this research because it allows you to stop and go, it is true. Because it is painful. It's painful to think these thoughts. And that's why I want you to really steal these 6 words from me. What if it all works out? I also want you to steal this Buddhist teaching and proverb that when misfortune or stress or something doesn't meet your expectations or something painful happens in your life, that is the first arrow. Hits you right in the heart. But the second arrow is the one that you fire back at yourself into the center of your forehead based on what you think about what just happened. And that's the piece that you have control over. Yes, you will always think negative thoughts, but you don't have to escalate it. You don't have to stay there. And you can use these 6 words, what if it all works out, and logic to pause that spiral and to question your thinking. And when you question yourself, well, what if it all works out? The fact is, it just might, right? Like, you don't know. You haven't even entertained that possibility because you've been so busy firing arrows at your forehead. You didn't even stop to think, well, there's a whole different possibility here. And based on the research at Penn State, 91% of the time, that's the possibility. So what the hell am I all worked up about? Because getting worked up, as we know, based on the research at UCLA and from Dr. Judith Willis, it doesn't help me. And here's the final piece. I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to face the things that are painful in your life. And I also believe in your ability to problem solve and to rise to these moments where life is painful and life is challenging. And if something bad is going to happen, I want you to not face it with an arrow in your head. I want you to have your full capacity to think clearly, to ask for help, to solve whatever issue is happening in your life. And that's why this is also important. It's because between now and whenever something amazing or something terrible happens in your life, you have the ability to be more present and to assume good intent and assume a positive outcome. And that is going to help you both enjoy your life, but it's also going to help you face things if they do in fact turn out to be hard, which we know based on the research is about 6% of the time. Those are odds I'm willing to play with. I'm willing to play with those odds. I'm willing to bet that things are okay. I'm willing to bet on you and me and our ability to be more positive, to be more optimistic, to be more trusting, and to live in that space until we know otherwise. Doesn't that sound like a good idea? I think it does too. When you train yourself to reach up and grab that second arrow before it hits your forehead, because you don't know. You don't know. So you might as well coach yourself to think something positive will happen. You might as well learn how to default to positive ideation, where you say, this could be the best thing that ever happens to me. This isn't easy, but I trust that I'm going to grow through it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I think I can figure it out. This is more difficult than I thought it would be, but boy, am I proud of myself for doing this. When you can default to positive ideation, I haven't heard from her in 2 days. She must be having the time of her life. I haven't heard from her in 2 days, but I saw that sunrise, which means she's probably so busy with all the friends she made up there because she was also taking photos of other people up there. She must be so busy. She didn't have time to talk to her mother. And wouldn't that be the most amazing thing that could happen if you went on a 4-month solo backpacking trip as a 24-year-old woman? To be so caught up in the moment that you don't have time to check in at home. Boy, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? And that's what I am telling myself, because that's what I believe is true. And research shows that getting your mind to focus on positive thoughts, positive outcomes, visualizing, hey, what would it look like if this all works out? Scientists call this positive ideation. It is so effective in beating down that worry. So I want you to try it. Because, hey, what if you use these 6 words and it all works out? That would be a beautiful thing. This is the new reality. Let's stop pretending there is some sort of milestone that is out in the future that's going to solve all this. And let's get strategic and let's get intentional about how we're going to work.
You talk frequently and openly on your social media and in your books about your own struggle with anxiety and panic disorders, and I don't mean to put you on the spot for that, but is there anything you would follow up with that would help our audience of millions of people around the world that perhaps have a colleague or a spouse or their boss or an employee, child that perhaps is facing some of those issues, or they themselves as well, that would maybe give everybody a light and some inspiration this morning?
Yeah, of course. So I would tackle it in 2 different ways. I'd tackle it in 2 different ways when you're dealing with somebody at work, especially if you're the manager or the leader at work, and somebody in your personal life. And the reason why I say that is because I think it's really important to be compassionate and understanding and supportive of, everybody in your life. But I'm not out to turn leaders and managers or anybody into a therapist. Because the fact of the matter is, when somebody's struggling, whether they're struggling with anxiety or depression, or they're struggling with issues related to trauma or PTSD, or heck, they're just struggling because we're still living through a global pandemic, and every single human being's nervous system right now has been switched into a state of fight or flight. And so, everybody, after 2 years of this, Scott, is living in a condition in their bodies that human beings are not designed to live in. We all feel emotionally taxed. We all feel the fatigue from being on Zoom conference calls all day long. We all feel the giant, oh, are you kidding me? As we see the virus continue to mutate and closings and this and that. And so at this moment, what leaders need to know is your team is emotionally, physically, and spiritually gassed. What they need from you is they need more appreciation. They need to be given a little bit more trust. And what I'm going to say about that, and I've been hammering this in speeches. I've been hammering this because I believe that every single company had the exact same response when the pandemic hit. And it is a very typical response because it's a response that tracks to the normal anxiety response. So as we unpack anxiety, Scott, I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things, but I promise we will end up in a place where there's lots of takeaway. So anxiety, first and foremost, everybody, it's a very important thing to have in life. Yes, you heard Mel Robbins say that. Anxiety is really important because all that anxiety is anxiety is an internal alarm system that is hardwired in your nervous system. And that alarm system has one job. The alarm system called anxiety has the job of making you pay attention. That's it. There is some kind of threat, some kind of uncertainty. When anxiety races through your body, you come alive and you go into a state of hyperfocus. Your nervous system switches into your sympathetic nervous system. You immediately go on edge. Your spidey senses come up. Your prefrontal cortex engages. Your heart starts to race. All of this, by the way, tied to evolution to keep you safe. Anxiety is a good thing when there is an actual threat.
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say, Scott, that you and I are driving down the road and we're chatting up a storm and we're driving, to go do a speech or whatever. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a semi truck cuts right into our lane and you have to swerve, right, to get out of the way. As that semi truck, Scott, cuts into our lane, what do you feel in your body?
A rush of adrenaline, fear for my life. I need to take immediate control over my safety because that driver doesn't know I'm alive or he wouldn't have cut in my lane.
Yeah, like immediately anxiety rips through your body, and anxiety is serving a purpose. It's sounding the alarm so that you stop talking to me and you pay attention. And all of a sudden your brain takes over, you swerve without even thinking about it, and your heart races, and all the blood runs to your major organs so that you can go into a state of hyperfocus. The reason why people feel nervous or anxious or excited before a test or before a speech is because you're going into a state of hyperfocus. Anxiety, that feeling in your body, is now making you align with what you're about to do so you can focus on it and perform. In the example that I just gave you, anxiety served a purpose. And here's what's interesting. As the truck pulls away and you kind of pull back into your lane, what happens in your body now that the truck is gone and we're driving down the road safely?
In my body or my wife's body?
In your body.
Well, in my body, I would, that anxiety probably stays for a little while, not for an hour, but probably, 45 seconds or so as I begin to calm down and kind of put it into context, and we're safe, we're alive, it's not going to happen again probably immediately. So I probably recover pretty quickly, but there's a lingering effect.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the 45 seconds because it is less than 90 seconds that most people switch from one emotional state to the other when there's intellectual context. So your body starts to slow down and it goes from the on-edge state, alert state, into what's called the parasympathetic state, which is your kind of rest and relax state, in about 90 seconds because your brain sees the truck leave and your brain goes, oh, no threat. The problem for people today, and this is true of everybody on your team, is that we have been living in a heightened state of uncertainty. And every single person on the planet, their nervous system right now is either flipped into the fight or flight mode of feeling on edge, or it easily, it's like a trigger, immediately flips into it. And so the normal things that somebody wouldn't stress out, they're super stressed out. And this is important to understand because I want you to, as a leader, to think about, first, let's talk about work. Assume that most people are at the end of their rope. They're trying the best that they can. They are burning the candle at both ends. They're having a hard time focusing and concentrating. And they're feeling uncertain and on edge. Because even if their work life is good, there's something going on with their kids at college. There's something going on with their kids in the high school. There's something going on with somebody in their family. And, you know, the spike in this sense of anxiety, the spike that we're seeing in terms of people's mental health is extraordinary. And I'm sure you're hearing the same thing from corporations that I'm hearing, which is that the number one concern that people have right now at the highest level in every single company, whether they're publicly traded or they're a small family business, is the well-being of their employees. And so one thing that you can do is, number one, you can encourage people to take time off. Number two, you can consciously, as a leader, make a strategic and intentional decision to move out of the mode that your company has been in for probably 2 years, because there are 3 phases to this pandemic that has impacted every corporation on the planet and every leader on the planet. Phase number 1 was life as it used to be, right? Because when the pandemic first hit, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, what's changing about life as it used to be? What life as it used to be? We're going to go back to the way life used to be. Phase number 2 was full-on crisis. Oh my gosh, we're in this. Yeah. And what you saw is an anxiety response from every single company on the planet because we had to. Everything got turned upside down. The rules got rewritten overnight. Everybody had to pivot and to innovate and to switch and to innovate. Like, it was incredible. And there was so much amazingness that came out of it. There is going to be, when we look back on this period, this is going to be one of the most rapid periods of innovation and disruption in a very positive way when it comes to business operations, the way that people work, like all kinds of stuff. But one of the disruptions that has been horrible for people is that companies immediately jumped to nonstop video conference calls. And what has happened for human beings who are working hybrid or working remote is that people feel like they need to always be online. And there are lots of companies that also still have a policy 2 years later that your camera is required to be on. This is a horrible thing to be doing to people. And the reason why it's a horrible thing to be doing to people is, number one, it communicates mistrust, which makes somebody who's already stressed out feel even worse. But number two, based on the brain science, here's what we know. If you're on a video conference call and you're staring at yourself, having to stare at yourself activates this part of your brain, Scott. When the prefrontal cortex is engaged, the rate at which you drain the fuel in your brain increases dramatically. The reason why it is so difficult for everybody to be productive right now, for everybody to focus, the reason why people feel more anxious, the reason why people feel more distracted, the reason why people feel like, my gosh, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I feel like I need 3 martinis and a nap. Like I have 4 more hours for the rest of the day or 10. The reason is because you are having to work in an environment that is triggering stress and anxiety and being on edge. Staring at yourself all day on camera is draining the fuel in your brain. And companies reacted so like panic mode that they haven't pulled back yet and stepped into phase 3 of the pandemic, which is, this is the new reality. Let's stop pretending there is some sort of milestone that is out in the future that's going to solve all this. And let's get strategic and let's get intentional about how we're going to work, because everything in the company can't be important or else nothing is. And every meeting can't be 50 people on a Zoom call because nobody can get work done. And we need to go back to getting intentional and strategic about what's important and going back to the basics of making sure people's weekly jobs are aligned with what matters. And we need to allow people and trust them to get their work done. That's one thing that you can do as a leader. Less Zoom calls, more appreciation, and cameras off. That's going to help people a ton when it comes to anxiety at work. The other thing that will help people a ton is triple down on appreciation. What I've figured out in researching the high five habit and having 145,000 people from 91 countries go through a 5-day online challenge that I led about the high five habit. In 5 days, Scott, not a single person reported that this high five habit didn't work. And what I've learned in researching the power of appreciation and developing habits of encouragement is that the most motivating force on the planet is to feel appreciated, to feel like somebody sees you and hears you and actually appreciates you. And I know that you talk about this a lot. People, and we're talking about the Great Resignation, right? And companies make the mistake of thinking that people are leaving organizations because they're looking for better compensation. That's not true. People leave organizations. There was a huge McKinsey study that proved this recently. They leave organizations because they don't feel valued or appreciated, and they don't feel like they belong. And so this should be a giant red flag for every leader out there. You've got the Great Resignation. You've got people really starting to think about what they value and what matters to them. You've got a hybrid work environment where it's going to take more intentionality to make people feel like they belong and to make sure that they feel appreciated. And so you've got to make sure that this is priority number one as you head into this next year, that the focus is on how do I make sure that people's work is getting recognized, that people feel visible, and that I am pointing out all the things they're doing right instead of harping on the thing that they're doing wrong. That is something that you can do that goes way beyond the corporate programs that people put in place. It's the basic blocking and tackling of making sure that everybody that reports to you feels appreciated by you. And it takes work. It takes a lot of work to build that as a muscle as a leader. I really love your work because you are trying to get us all to go to the source of what's triggering mental health issues, which is stored experiences and the alarm in your body and your inability to tolerate or understand what's happening when it goes off. And so I have recently had this experience where I'm waking up and I get these waves of anxiety. And what's interesting is that this is not new for me. I mean, I've struggled with anxiety for 30 years, but we have just recently had a number of huge changes in our life. And I now live in a different state in a very small town. And when I wake up in the morning in the middle of all this change, my alarm is not on the nightstand next to me. It begins in my ankles, and it's like a hot lava wave that goes from my ankles, up my legs, all the way up my stomach, and then it solidifies in my chest. And as soon as I feel this wave, my immediate thought is not, oh, I want to feel the alarm. It's, fuck, why am I feeling this? I don't want to feel dread. And then I feel like I just want to hide from it or like try to fall asleep. And I know that it's just my body reacting to all this change. Like it's some sort of stored experience that is coming up. And I've been working so hard on not freaking out when I feel it, right, but turning toward it. And as a medical doctor and a neuroscientist and somebody who has struggled with anxiety for 30 years, why is turning toward this alarm the answer in that moment. Like, what would happen? Like, tell me what happens when you turn toward it and you put your hands on your chest, or you go, oh, thank you. You're just trying to protect me because you're scared to death that you now live in Vermont and you have no friends, and you're very far away from your kids, and you're going to live alone here on this mountain and be even more lonely. Like, I get through this whole like catastrophizing, which only make it worse, versus welcome this bullshit in. Like, I don't want to. Like, I just don't want it to be there, Russ.
Yeah, I get it. What if it's not bullshit though, Mel? What if it's little Mel? Did you have a nickname when you were a little girl?
This really is becoming therapy, isn't it?
Oh, well, I give it a try.
Yeah, when you started talking about the mismatch with the mom, I'm like, I hope my mother doesn't listen to this episode, because I even feel guilty for admitting that we are kind of a mismatch, or are a mismatch. Yeah, well, my sometimes my mom calls me Melly, and friends of mine call me Melly, and yeah, friends of mine called me Melly.
Is there a name that you relate to as a child? A nickname that you relate to?
You know, in many ways, I think Mel, because I still feel very much like a child at times, and I still feel like that vulnerable kid, and I still feel like the person that's on the outside looking in. I feel separate. Like, that word separate makes a lot of sense for me. Like, there's a feeling that I have in life that I'm observing what's happening, but I'm not a part of it.
Yeah, and just because you've kind of given me permission here, I mean, you've spent a lot of your life outrunning your anxiety, right? And it's worked for you, Mel. You're very successful. It's worked for you. I see this with a lot of very intelligent people. They can intellectually kind of outrun their anxiety.
What does that even mean?
It means that you keep yourself so busy that you don't get a chance to sit with that alarm in your body.
I don't want to sit with it. That's why.
Exactly.
Why do you think moving to Vermont where there's nothing to do is so fucking terrifying? Like, I can't run to Target to make my anxiety go away.
Right.
Like, I feel like I'm addicted to negative stress, and this addiction to negative stress is what I've done to numb my anxiety.
Well, it's sublimating it.
That is a big word. What does sublimating mean?
Sure. Sorry. You've taken this energy and you found a way to make it work for you.
So I've taken the negative alarm or the alarm in my body, and I've channeled it in a direction so I don't have to feel it.
Yes.
And when you said, what if the alarm is trying to help you?
Yeah.
What the hell did you mean by that?
What if it's little Mel? What if it's the younger version of you saying, hey, I need some attention. And then when you say, fuck off, I don't want to feel you. Literally, what if you had a child come up to you in a grocery store and they were crying and they had their hands up in the air to pick them up? Would you push them away? Would you go, see ya, fuck off? No, you wouldn't. You'd pick that damn child up. But we won't do it for ourselves.
God, that's so true.
Yeah, we won't do it for ourselves. We'll do it for our pets. Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, if somebody else had an alarm going off in their body.
Yep.
And they were like freaking out or worried or sad or upset or needing attention or reassurance, you would give that to them. But without hesitation. I'm sure with Sawyer and Oakley, you do that all the time. All the time.
Yeah, but you don't do it for yourself.
No, and I think that this is the singular biggest mistake that society has made around understanding anxiety. I just had a huge breakthrough here. Holy shit, Russ. Okay, so let me just see if I can give this back to everybody listening.
Sure.
So it's the fact that you're scared of the alarm or you can't tolerate it and you don't understand what it's trying to ask of you that makes it worse.
Yes.
And if you were to realize that any tension or fear or kind of scary feeling in your body is an alarm system that
from your child.
From your inner child or asking you for reassurance or love or attention, and you just gave yourself that reassurance or love or attention, the alarm would turn off. Is that what you're saying?
Slowly, yeah, because it's been an adaptation for you too. You got to remember that the ego thinks it's protecting you by firing.
I don't understand what the ego is. That's too
Oh,
intellectual for me.
you're gonna have to have me back.
I
That's
will
a
have you back to talk about the ego. But the second anybody says ego, I'm like, oh, this is somebody who's way smarter than me. I don't want to try to figure out what the hell an ego is. Like, and we will have you back because we all need to know what the ego is. However,
Sure.
I just want to stay on this because I think this is a groundbreaking idea that I want everybody who either has some level of situational or generalized anxiety or loves somebody who has situational or generalized anxiety. And at this moment in time, that would be every human being on the planet. And I want you to understand that we have been taught that we're supposed to attack it from the neck up with the thinking first. And that's one of the things you need to do to cope. But the real heart of healing your anxiety, which you claim you've done, and I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
But and I don't mean to use the word claim like I don't believe you.
I claim that I have gotten so much better, but yeah. My
Well,
God.
you're a medical doctor, so you can say that. I feel like I understand anxiety. I still hate it. And I need to have a different relationship with it.
You do.
And I need to, and everybody needs, for the sake of your kids, the people that you love, for yourself, you need to understand this alarm system in your body and the fact that it desperately needs you. And you need to take a neck down approach to listening to the alarm and diffusing it in a way that, wow. So over time, if you do this, the alarm doesn't go off as much?
No, yeah, that's true. It's not as intense, and you're not compulsively running up into your head when you feel the alarm. So if I had a motorcycle in my front yard, I used to work emerge as a doc, and it's like I don't, you know,
You
I
used to, does
don't-
emerge mean emergency?
Oh, emergency, yeah.
Okay, so
the
you used to
emergency-
work in the emergency room as a doctor.
I delivered babies. I did kind of the whole kind of general thing.
Okay.
Now, if I had a motorcycle in my front yard, that's why I bring up motorcycles, is because I used to see bad accidents with motorcycles. I don't condone motorcycles. I think they're fun, but they're dangerous. Anyway, sidetrack. So if I had a motorcycle in my front, I've never ridden one before. So if I had a motorcycle in my front driveway and I had 50 books on how to drive a motorcycle, ride a motorcycle, and then I go out to the motorcycle, I sit on it and I go, no, you know what? I got to go back and I got to read a little more about how the brakes work. And then until you get on that frickin' motorcycle and ride it around and maybe fall off a few times, which is the same thing with the emotion. As soon as you get on the alarm, you start actually feeling better. Like when you said about that thing about the person in the school drop off, as soon as you put your hand over that place of alarm, you will feel instantly better. I'm not saying it's going to, take it from a 9 to a 2, but it's going to take it from a 9 to a 4 because you're actually, from a consciousness perspective, you are actually going at the root source of the problem, which is this little child in you that says, I don't like this person. And it's not this person. It's basically, I don't like someone from my past that this person reminds me of.
Or I don't like the feeling that I have in my body when I see this person, and this is a familiar feeling from my past.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you had like a chaotic parent or an unpredictable parent or a mentally ill parent or an absent parent, this goes back to your original point. When you have a parent that you can't either connect with or that is unpredictable or that makes you feel invisible or not safe, that alarm system in your body develops as a child. And that is what you're saying when you say all anxiety has resulted because of separation anxiety as a child. When you feel separate or unsafe or unseen or not heard or not loved or invisible in your home, that original experience that you probably don't remember, that encoded your body when you were tiny.
Yeah.
And anytime then from that point forward, anytime you again felt invisible or you felt attacked or you felt unloved, that alarm got even stronger. And so now it's like this automatic response in your body to those situations where you feel separate. Am I getting this?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and what happens is when we feel the alarm, we go up into our heads to escape it because we feel this alarm in our body. It's like, I don't want to feel this. So we go up into our heads and we try and think, well, what could this be? We analyze, we go into this, we have this like just fixation, this left hemisphere fixation on figuring stuff out, which basically just creates more of a problem. I talk about in my book about, Ulysses and the Siren Island, so Ulysses
Again, you're way smarter than me, so you got to tell me the story.
Okay, so it's basically
Is this like a Greek myth class that I skipped in college? Okay.
Yeah, it's that English stuff. I'd much rather write a physics exam than an English exam. But anyway, so it's basically Siren Island. So there's these beautiful women on this island, and what the sailors will do when they hear these beautiful women singing is they'll run their ships aground, and then they'll try and swim to these sirens. And the sirens turn into monsters and kill them, hack them apart, whatever they want to do. So it basically, that's your thoughts. Your thoughts are like Siren Island. Your thoughts are trying to suck you into going, hey, we have the answer, when all they have is more problem. You're not going to solve anxiety, which is basically a problem of overthinking with more frickin' thinking. It's just not going to work.
Well, okay, so can I ask you a question? Why the hell, if there is an alarm system wired in our body, why is our brain not able to go, it's just an alarm system? Just give yourself a hug and take a deep breath. Thank it for trying to protect you. Next. Why do we not just automatically say that? Why do we kill ourselves in our own minds with our thoughts?
Because we don't understand it's there in the first place. We don't understand.
The alarm?
Yeah. We don't understand that it's our younger self asking for our attention. So we feel pain. And like any organism, we withdraw from pain. And it's like the motorcycle that is on the front. If I don't get on that motorcycle and ride it around, maybe fall off a couple of times, I'm never really going to learn how to acclimatize to that emotion, that alarm. Bessel van der Kolk talks about that in The Body Keeps the Score. We're not teaching people how to get rid of their anxiety. We're teaching them how to acclimatize to it. And then I add on to that and stop adding thoughts to it. Because as soon as you add thoughts to the alarm, A, you're getting out of the problem, and B, you're just making it worse. So
Go ahead, please.
So basically, we get in this thing what I call the alarm anxiety cycle. So something triggers us. Say we're in that lineup. We see this person that we don't like, and then we go, oh, why don't I like this person? I should really try and make an effort. I should really. And it's like, well, no, she did this or he did that.
I'm like, don't make eye contact. Get on the phone. Make a fake phone call. Avoid. Turn shoulder. Holy shit, are they closer? Like, I'm like, what?
Run away!
Yes.
Run away! To quote a Monty Python thing. So basically, what we're doing is we're trying to intellectualize the alarm that we're feeling in our body, and it's not the solution isn't in our minds. The solution's in our body, which is why so many people have a hard time healing from anxiety because we're trying to use more thoughts to combat overthinking.
My big takeaway right now so far is that all the thinking that we reflexively do about the feelings in our body makes the alarm louder. And that we have to learn to stop going above the neck and thinking about what's going on. And we need to train ourselves to go below the neck into our bodies and turn toward the alarm and give ourselves the reassurance and the soothing or whatever it is that the alarm is asking for in that moment.
Yeah.
And that if you do that, you are now taking step one on the path of truly, what would you call it? Dealing, calming, curing your anxiety.
Getting at the root cause.
Getting at the root cause.
That's exactly what it is. You're getting at the root cause, which is the alarm. The thoughts are not the cause. The thoughts are a symptom. So the thoughts are just a byproduct of this alarm that's stuck in your body. Now, thoughts do cause, anxiety. There's no two ways about that. But I think where the mismanage is, where the mistake is that we believe the thoughts originate before the feeling. And I'm saying the feeling starts before the thought.
The feeling starts before the thought. Because every one of us knows a kid that can work themselves up into a panic attack because they think they're going to throw up.
Sure.
And what I now realize after years of having kids with anxiety and reading so many books about this subject that I should have a PhD, and being in years of therapy myself, is that if a child, like let's take my son. So our son Oakley, when he was little, he was constantly picked on at school. So of course he felt nervous in the morning before he had to head into school.
Sure.
Plus the kid had dyslexia and ADHD, all of which was not diagnosed. So he's heading into a full day in a classroom where he physiologically, neurologically is incapable of doing what is going to be asked of him. And so his body, before entering that situation, sounds an alarm.
Totally.
And when the alarm sounds and the physiological changes happen, guess what physiological feeling he has? His stomach starts to rumble, because as the physiology of the alarm changes and the chemistry in his digestive tract changes, he starts getting butterflies that feel like pterodactyls. And then all of a sudden, instead of just giving himself a hug and going, it's going to be okay, today's going to be an okay day, I can face this, instead of reassuring himself, he goes into his head and says, oh my God, my stomach, I think I'm going to puke. I can't go to school. Holy, and he ramps himself. We were dealing with panic attacks with this kid where he would literally bang his head on the kitchen island. I don't want to go to school, crying. He would force himself to throw. He would get so worked up, he would actually throw up. I mean, it was horrible. And I now can see that all of the interventions that were being done with this kid with therapists, which were all about just change the channel upstairs.
Right.
And then he would turn to them and say, but sometimes when I change the channel, it takes me to a channel I don't want to watch. So what if I change the channel of my thoughts and I get another bad thought? Like even he was reacting against it, but nobody taught us that what the kid needed was a hug, validation, reassurance in that moment physically to get the alarm to quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it.
Any pattern of behavior or thinking that you start to repeat becomes a habit. Habits are just patterns. It's all that they are. And so I had a life experience because of one incident where I would wake up every single morning and feel like something was wrong and I couldn't put my finger on it. And the more that you wake up and think something's wrong, the more your brain is going to find reasons why something might be wrong. And so I developed this sort of chronic state of feeling on alert, feeling the sense that I got to be aware.
Fight or flight.
Yes. My, in clinical terms, my sympathetic nervous system got switched on and I had no idea how to turn it off. And if you don't know how to calm your nervous system down, to flip off the sympathetic nervous system and flip on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your calm, grounded, resting nervous system, you will forever struggle with focus, with being present, with the ability to think clearly and make good decisions. You will constantly talk about the fact that you feel anxious, and that comes from your nervous system always being on edge and being in fight or flight. I didn't know any of this. I was just a nervous kid with a nervous stomach. Every camp that I went to, I got sent home because I was too homesick. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know how homesick you have to be for trained counselors to actually call your parents and go, we got a problem here. She can't stay here. Like, she is out of her mind.
When you say out of your mind, what are the physical symptoms or verbal symptoms of that?
Oh, my gosh. Complete disassociation. So I would be at camp, like literally sixth grade camp. So at the end of sixth grade year, and I feel bad for little Mel Robbins. I feel bad for her because, here's this experience, sixth grade camp, where the entire school for 4 nights goes away to a camp, just the sixth grade. It's supposed to be the culmination of your sixth grade year. And I am so freaked out that something bad is going to happen, that I, of course, escalate things in my own mind. I don't even feel like I'm at camp. I feel like I'm walking on a movie set. I don't feel like I'm on Earth. I feel like I'm on a spaceship somewhere looking down all the time. I feel like I might throw up because my stomach is rattled, because when you're anxious and you can't focus your thoughts, you tend to not eat. And so that, of course, upsets your stomach. It's not that something bad's going to happen. It's that you're screwing up the chemistry in your stomach by not eating because you're so nervous, which only makes it worse. And as your mind is scrambling, thinking something bad is going to happen, and then your stomach is hurting, then you start to think, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. And then you start to think, well, if I throw up, something bad's going to happen. And then the kids are going to laugh. And like, it just becomes this spiral train wreck. And that is the state that I lived in. And so, you learn how to cope. It becomes your new normal. But that was basically my life, constantly feeling like something bad was going to happen, constantly feeling like I wasn't really present, constantly lying or fibbing about how I felt or what I was thinking because I didn't want people to judge me. I mean, it's awful.
And then you come through college and you've got to make that choice in life as to which direction you're going to go in. It seems quite...
Choice. I love the choice, yeah.
Yeah, well, how would you define it?
Panic.
Panic, yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because I had only ever lived in survival mode.
So did you not take a pause to decide to sort of listen
Take a pause?
who you were and what your calling was? And
Take a pause? When you have anxiety, your whole mode of living is, if I'm on the move, no one can catch me. If I am on the run, I'm safe. And so what's interesting is that I think the only time in my life that I have actually slowed down was during the pandemic. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You had no choice.
Yeah. And one of the hardest things, which became one of the greatest realizations, is truly coming face to face with myself and realizing that even though I have done all this work to heal trauma, even though I have done extraordinary things in terms of my own thinking patterns, that there was a level to which I was still on the run, that I was darting off to a coffee shop or darting off to Target or darting off to an airplane. And all of this racing around kept me from having to truly stop and stand with the woman in the mirror and just be still and figure out, well, what do I really want? How do I really want to feel?
You talk about the topic of distraction and procrastination, and it's rarely in this context, but it sounds like a form of distraction, distracting yourself from taking a moment to confront thyself and to really ask some of those questions, which I guess if you're in a fight or survival state, the answers to some of those questions might be maybe illuminating to a vulnerable, to an extent which will make you feel vulnerable and unsafe, because those are pretty existential questions to ask yourself, to look at yourself and say, who am I and what do I want? And, how do I get it? It's much easier, as you say, just to be swept by the tide. Mm-hmm. And that's a form of short-term defense. It feels like a short-termist, we'll just get to tomorrow,
Yeah.
And some people go through their lives doing that, right?
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
I was. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you, so make sure you subscribe. Mwah.